Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for clicking on the video as always. It's probably been a good 3-4 months since I've said that. I haven't put a video out for quite a while. I haven't actually been out camping for quite a while either. And if I'm honest, I feel like the world's just completely gone to shit. And I just haven't had the motivation to do this kind of stuff. Especially some of the things that I talk about, they just feel so small in comparison to some of the stuff that's going on in the world right now. Anyway, I'm not going to dwell on that. It is June 21st, so it's the summer solstice, longest day of the year. It's incredibly warm. It's about 22 degrees at the moment and very humid, so it's very midgy. There's lots of flies about, but I'll say a bit more about that in a minute. I've got another new shelter to try for this trip. It's basically a big bug net from One Wind. I got sent it a while ago, but obviously when I got sent it, the bugs weren't really a thing. Now it's like peak sort of bug time, so this is the perfect time to use it. So we'll try that out. I've got a new stove, gas stove from Fire Maple. Again, I got sent that a while ago actually, and I've been meaning to try it for quite a while, so that should be good as well. I'm not going to hang around. Like I say, it's quite midgy, lots of flies around. I'm getting bitten already, even though I've been sitting down here for just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to get this shelter up. I've not set it up before, so you'll basically be working it out with me. I think it's fairly straightforward. Ridge line, attach it, peg it out, and it should be good to go. So the shelter basically attaches to a ridge line like you would set up for a tarp, and the tarp goes over it. It doesn't come with a tarp. You can buy a One Wind tarp extra, but they didn't send me that. So I'm just going to use my DD 3x3. Hopefully it has attachments in the right place to connect it all up, which will make sense in a minute. So I'm just going to take the ridge line out of here that I would use for the tarp. I'll put that up first, see sort of what height the shelter is and figure all that out, and then I'll probably throw the tarp over the top. Right, so it's attached to the ridge line, and now it should just be a case of pegging out the 6 corners on the ground. Right, it's slowly taking shape. So yeah, as you can see, it's attached to the ridge line there. we've got it pegged out, so the inside, you're starting to sort of see the shape of it. So we've got to put the tarp on now, and then the shelter itself kind of attaches to the tarp and that pulls it out properly. I think a sort of diamond configuration with the tarp should be okay, and then the tie outs will be in the right place, but I'll try that just now and find out. Go on in. There we go. Nice. Is that good? Is that good? I'm quite happy with it. Lots of space. I can stand up no problem, which is good. It's actually designed to be used with a hammock as well, so it's got the double zip, so you can put the tie outs, you know, through the zip onto the tree. Obviously I'm getting quite hungry now, so I've just got like a boil in the bag meal, a veggie one, smoky stew with potatoes and lentils, so that should be good. I'm just going to boil up some water on this new stove. I'll talk a bit more about the stove later on. I just want to make a quick, you know, something to eat and coffee at the moment. Oof. Right guys, it is 7 o'clock, so I'm going to start making dinner. I've got a stir fry tonight, tempeh stir fry, I think that's how you say it. So it's going to be a bit of a veggie one. I've got mushrooms, edamame, and some sort of mixed veg stuff as well, like just pre sort of cut stuff. There's like peppers and carrots and that kind of stuff in there. So yeah, I'm going to cook that up just now. It's so warm that I'm kind of not that hungry really, but I'm going to make it anyway. I suppose I don't have to eat it all like straight away. Yeah, this stove is from Fire Maple. It's got like the braided hose, so it just goes to the gas canister. On top of here you've got like a valve to adjust it. And the interesting thing about this stove is that you can use it as a heater. So you can take the grill off there, and it's got like a sort of a heating function. And if you really want to, on the back you can attach it to a tripod, so you can just have it, you know, in front of you like that. And if it's just, you know, a bit of a chilly night, you know, at the end of a warm day, that kind of thing, clear skies, then it's just going to take the edge off, I think. Another interesting piece of kit from Fire Maple. I feel like they're producing quite a lot of good stuff at the moment, so yeah, I was happy to try it out. Yeah, the last couple months I've actively been trying to reduce my meat consumption, and I do enjoy eating meat. I've been a big meat eater most of my life. It's kind of what I'm used to, but I just struggle more and more these days with the impact of, you know, meat production on the planet, on the animals themselves. You know, it's something I think more and more about lately. Wouldn't be a Highland Woodsman trip without a little bit of Lefroy, if I can get it open. But yeah, the last couple of months, I mean, I mentioned it at the start of the video, but I've obviously not been making videos, and I actually sold the drone and sold my camera, as in I had enough of it all, and then I bought a new camera and bought a new drone and then didn't do anything for a couple months with them, and until now basically. But yeah, I did have a very nice trip out to Santa Bay on the west coast of Scotland on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula. Really nice few days, just had a wee Airbnb there. Weather was mixed, was probably the best description, but it was still good. Had a really nice time. Oh. Wait. You lie down. Any bit in. Any bit. Any bit. Right guys, that's actually midnight now, and there's still quite a bit of light. You can kind of see behind me, and still very warm, but I think I'm going to call it a night there and get into bed, and I will see you in the morning. Oh, right. Morning folks, it is 5:30 in the morning. I was having a wonderful sleep and the rain and thunder started, which was forecast, that's fine. But obviously as the stitching has gotten wet, there's a bit more tension on this whole thing. The shelter failed, the one wind shelter, not the tarp. Stitching on the tarp's fine, DD tarp, you know, no bother, but the corner loop on this completely snapped, and then that's kind of pulled the whole thing down, including the tarp, and it sort of allowed the rain to get in, so everything's pretty soaked. So yeah, all my stuff's pretty wet. Sleeping mat and sleeping bag soaked. I got out and tried to sort of rectify the tarp as quick as possible, but it was raining pretty heavy, so things are pretty soaked through. But that's the reality, I guess. You know, I'm not going to pretend that this shelter's fantastic if it's not. So when I get home, this will be going straight in the bin. One of the tie-down stitchings, actually, where you come in and out, that's failed as well, so that's pretty disappointing, to be honest. Bit of an abrupt ending to the video, but as you can imagine, I'm not going to hang around here. There's just no point, everything's soaked. So I'm just going to get packed up, everything in the bag, get back to the van and get home and get everything dried out. Hi folks, thanks for sticking around for Forest Thoughts as always. Apologies for the abrupt ending to the main video there, but as you can probably understand, it was just a bit of a fail and I just wanted to get out of there and get home and get dry. I'm actually filming this a couple weeks later, and it's another very warm weekend. The whole of the UK is in the grip of a little bit of a heat wave at the moment. It was almost 30 degrees here yesterday, which is pretty unbelievable. So it's actually 7 o'clock in the morning at the moment. I came out early just to film this little bit and try and avoid the worst of the heat. But what I wanted to talk about in this video is not so much tree related, it's about the Scottish Midge. Now, if you spent any time outdoors in Scotland, especially during the summer, or you've even read about visiting Scotland, you've probably heard of our infamous Scottish Midge. And Scotland actually has around 35 species of midge, but it's the species Culicoides impunctatus specifically that is the most numerous and by far the most likely to have bitten you if you've been bitten by a midge. Although the common name is the Scottish Midge, it's not only in Scotland that it's present, but it is quite restricted to kind of northwesterly temperate climates. That's what it seems to enjoy. So all over Scotland really, parts of northwest England, Ireland as well. You'll get areas in sort of western Norway. And there's some sort of fringe populations, you know, down sort of western mainland Europe, a little bit in sort of northwestern Spain, but largely it's kind of absent from the rest of the world, although there's obviously very similar species in North America and Asia. But its stronghold really is Scotland, especially the west of Scotland. The conditions here are just absolutely ideal for it. And what are the ideal conditions? Well, like I said, that kind of northwesterly temperate climate, you know, not too hot, not too cold, damp. You know, dampness is a big feature for midge. They like to breed in sort of wet vegetation and sort of pools. They like shady conditions as well. So, you know, a sort of damp woodland or peat bog is just ideal for them. And as I mentioned a minute ago, you know, the west of Norway, they're quite common as well. And that's because we share very similar climatic conditions. But as you move kind of north and east into Scandinavia, they're a little bit less common because those areas have extreme cold. And the midge need to overwinter. And that extreme cold kind of limits them a little bit. And also, as you get further north, obviously that spring, or sorry, winter season is obviously extended a lot further, so that gives the midge a lot less time to breed. Whereas here in Scotland, especially the northwest Scotland, I mean, March time is probably wet enough and mild enough for them to get going. Whenever I speak to people about midge, or I hear people talking about them who haven't experienced them, I think a lot of people tend to assume it's like a mosquito. And there's obviously lots of similar behaviours between the two, but in terms of size, a midge is a lot smaller. It's only sort of 1 to 2 millimetres across, it's tiny. And what makes them really relentless is just their ability to swarm. Now I've got some numbers here that I thought was quite interesting. It's thought for really dense swarms of midge, there could be up to 40,000 per cubic metre of air, which is just ridiculous. And that can be as many as 21 million per hectare in perfect conditions. And the reason they sort of swarm en masse like that is essentially to come together to breed. So for the first cycle in the year, the larvae from the end of last year will overwinter in the soil. Once conditions are ideal for them to emerge, they'll come together, swarming, breed, and the reason they're so sort of relentless is it's only the females that actually bite, because they need a blood meal. They need that first blood meal to be able to breed and lay eggs for the next generation. So the males don't bite, but they're obviously an important part of the breeding process. So they come together and they're just sort of biting everything and breeding. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of it, it can be just horrendous. And again, I think for people who haven't really experienced it, it's easy to sort of play it down because they are so small, or they've experienced them a little bit, but not in proper ideal conditions. I mean, the worst I've ever experienced is when I worked on the Isle of Skye, and I was in a forestry block, a spruce forestry block, really dark, really damp, really shaded, no breeze at all. I had my midge net on, but the midge were so thick on the outside of the midge net that I couldn't see where I was going. So I just had to lift the midge net up as I was walking around. And then I was literally inhaling them with every breath because there was just no escape. So until you've actually experienced those types of conditions, I would reserve your judgment on how bad you think they actually are. Now, one good thing about the midge is, although they are incredibly annoying, they don't really pose any health risk. So it's not like ticks that carry the Lyme disease. They're not known to really carry any disease. There's midge in other parts of the world that do, and it can be quite serious. But here, it's really just the irritation. And again, in terms of reaction to the bites, it's a little bit of a spectrum. For myself, you know, it's a little bit itchy, and there'll be a red dot on the skin for a while, but it doesn't really bother me too much after. Whereas some people can react quite badly, and the bites can be quite itchy for some days after. But I mean, this year, the ticks here have been relentless. They've been really, really bad. I must have removed, I don't know, well over 150 from the dog this year. It's just every day. I've had a couple of bites this year already. For the midge, I think because we've had such a dry year, really dry spring, and it's been really dry so far this summer, it's really knocked them back, especially for that first sort of breeding cycle. A lot of the little pools that they use just don't exist at the moment. Like I say, they don't really like the sort of hot blazing sunshine either. They like it a bit shaded, mild but not really hot, So it's been very noticeable that they've not really been much of an issue yet. If we had a really wet summer from now on, once they get into that second breeding cycle, they can definitely make up for it. They can definitely make up for lost time. but so far the dryness is sort of restricting them a little bit. I suppose that just leaves me to talk about protection, which is probably the bit that most people are interested in. And I would say first and foremost, if you can, pick your time and pick your place. There's obviously going to be certain areas at certain times of the year, you know, like a damp shaded woodland in the middle of summer where it's going to be really, really bad. Go to somewhere like the coast or the top of a hill where there's a bit of a breeze. It's not going to be so much of an issue. Because they are so small, they really struggle in the wind. So I think it's something like, is it 9 to 11 kilometers an hour? You know, once the wind gets to that speed, it's very hard for them to swarm and, you know, carry out their normal activities. So if there's a bit of a breeze, that's fantastic. They're also attracted to CO2. So the CO2 we generate through breathing, you know, they can detect that. But obviously if it's, you know, quite windy, that inhibits their ability to sort of track you down, if you will. Now, if you can't choose your time and your place, then a physical barrier is always going to be your best bet. And the most common thing people wear is a midge net. Most of you all know what I mean. It's literally just a very fine mesh net that goes over your head. You wear it over your head. One thing that I found a couple of years ago is they're called the Midge specs, and I don't actually have them here today to show them. Someone's borrowing them at the moment, but it's literally like, you know, safety glasses sort of fixed into the net so you can actually see properly whilst having the net on. And honestly, it's fantastic. If you've ever worn a midge net for any length of time and you're trying to do a task, you know, especially if you're out researching, recording or something, or anything we need to see detail, it's so restrictive having the midge net on. So the fact that you can see clearly out is really good. I'll leave a link in the description for those. Another less common thing that seems to be worn here is like a bug jacket. Now, the sort of heavy duty ones you get, you know, you see people wearing in sort of North America for like the black flies and the mosquitoes, is probably overkill for here because the midge can't physically get through much material at all. But you can get sort of like a lighter, like a mesh jacket. I really like to wear them when the conditions are bad because it means that you can wear short sleeves if it's warm, but you're still, you know, you're still protected all over. And then finally, you've obviously got just a whole array of, you know, sprays and, you know, bars and lotions and all these kind of things that you can, you know, physically apply to your skin that deters them. The common one obviously is like citronella based sprays. By far the most effective one I've found is Midge. You can get it in sort of bigger and smaller bottles. You can actually get wipes as well, like a wet wipe that you literally just wipe onto your skin. And you'll hear all sorts of people saying this works the best, this works the best. But if you're in the worst conditions, then by far Midge has been the most effective. And it'll never be 100% effective. It really is just to ease the conditions a little bit. You know, it'll not deter them all because they're just desperate for that, you know, blood meal from you. Another thing that I'll recommend is the company Midge that makes the spray. They actually have a midge forecast online, so you can go on at any point and you can see for sort of general areas in Scotland just how bad the midge are. And I think it's on a scale of like 1 to 5, with 5 being the worst. So that's really useful if you're not really familiar with the conditions in Scotland or the conditions where midge would be quite bad, and you can make your own judgment. That should give you an idea depending on where you're going. So yeah, I think that's it. Just a quick rundown on the Scottish midge. Hope you found that interesting. Hope you enjoyed the main video, and hopefully I will see you on the next one.